what the hell's up? Welcome back to Reviews with Jake, where I just got done watching We Summon the Darkness. We Summon the Darkness is about three friends who go on a road trip to a heavy metal concert in the midst of a lot of grisly murders happening that are linked to satanic rituals and cults. And during the night of the concert, they actually find themselves a lot closer to this mess than they thought they would get. Now, I was curious about this movie for a couple reasons, the first of which being a couple of the people that star in it. Alexandra Daddario because, well, Alexandra Daddario, and Johnny Knoxville because, well, Johnny frickin' Knoxville. I feel like neither of those really require much explanation, albeit for very different reasons. My second reason for interest in this movie was the fact that it's the rare breed that centers itself around the heavy metal music scene. This is a scene I was a part of for many years as the frontman of a couple different metal bands for a few years, as well as just an avid concert and show goer. While my personal involvement in the music scene, specifically that of the heavy metal genre, has faded over the years, I'm pretty sure the last show or concert I went to was Cradle of Filth, maybe over a year ago. It's still a scene that holds a special place in my heart because I had a lot of really great years with a lot of really interesting and rather misunderstood people. I personally really enjoy comparing my personal experiences with this group of people versus Hollywood's portrayal of them, which is often quite a caricature, which usually makes them all the more fun. Generally speaking, they're comprised of a lot of really ridiculous things and characters and events, really over the top, and they're just a lot of fun to watch and make. I say this because a few friends of mine actually made a movie around this genre a few years back that I acted in, and that was a whole hell of a lot of fun to be a part of. From the moments when I was just a clueless, stupid, just thrasher dude, to the moment when I was getting my head bashed in with a brick. Bottom line is, this is a type of movie that I generally have a lot of fun around, and I was excited to see this new entry into this subgenre to see what they were bringing to the table. And the pros start there. They found a very interesting, unique approach to this movie. I mean, generally speaking, there's a lot of movies with very similar synopsises, but they always find their spin to kind of make it unique. From Lords of Chaos to Greenwood to, hell, even Jennifer's Body could kind of count for that. I mean, granted, it wasn't a metal band, but it was a band that was doing satanic rituals in order to make their band more successful. I mean, I'll count it. But while all these movies sound very similar on paper, they all kind of did their own thing to stand apart from the rest and put their own stamp of uniqueness. And this film was no different. This film didn't feel like those other movies. It had its own thing going. In this day and age, you have to applaud some creativity, and this movie had some. Speaking of creativity, this movie also had a couple very memorable, noteworthy kills, acts of violence, just sequences in general, that prompted me to give the response that I look for when watching this type of movies, and that's just like a what? That's how I want to react to watching these movies, and this movie had its moments. I also thought the acting was decent in this movie. I mean, this movie had a lot of really interesting characters, all of which had different personality traits and everything, and I felt like all the main talent kind of hit each of these very different characters appropriately. However, that note does transition right into the cons. This movie had some very atrocious writing and dialogue. Now, it can sometimes be very difficult to distinguish between poor writing and poor acting. I mean, they're often two sides of the same coin, but I felt like this was a movie that I was able to identify one over the other. When you take a step back and look at the movie and the performances and the writing, you do feel as if the talent did nail exactly what they were supposed to do, but what they were supposed to do wasn't ideal. Something I've noticed quite often with movies that are centered around this particular scene is that the dialogue often seems very forced and not natural. The way that they often talk about music and bands just always feels like they push the envelope a little too much. Like they're really overselling the fact that these people indeed listen to metal music. It almost feels like someone who Wikipedia's a topic, whatever it may be, and then acts like the authority on that particular topic when really they just kind of know the bullet points. Who is a popular metal band? Metallica. Okay, write down Metallica. Band history. The bassist died. Write down that the bassist died. And how did people feel about this? Bummed. They were bummed. Write that down. Make a whole scene about that. You just never feel like the person who wrote the script really lived this lifestyle, felt it, experienced it, and they just always push just a little too hard. And I get that sometimes that's intentional. These aren't supposed to be really real, fleshed out characters. They're just supposed to be there for pure entertainment value. I get that often that is the case, but this movie didn't give me the impression that that's really the direction they were going for. And that was largely attributed to a tone that was very inconsistent and back and forth. I mean, there were portions of this movie where it felt like they were going that over-the-top route, not taking itself very seriously, where this poor dialogue would maybe be a little bit more at home. But then at other moments, it felt like they were taking themselves super seriously. So it was just kind of like this big tonal game of ping pong where the two of these were just butting heads the entire time, and it never really landed on a vibe, and as a result, it just felt flat. Outside of the inconsistent tone and vibe, this movie was also just littered with flawed logic and continuity errors. They threw this sort of twist into the movie, which, if you were looking at the movie up until that point, it was like a Ziploc bag of water, and then they did the twist and you flip it upside down and just everything just poured out the bottom. You take a step back and look at the movie after the fact and you realize there are entire subplots and scenes and exchanges that just had no effect on the story itself. It just felt like padding, which they probably needed considering the movie is barely 90 minutes. I absolutely appreciated what they were trying to do, but it felt like the script that they were working with here didn't really have an extra proofread. Like, they should have looked this thing over, once, twice, maybe 3 times more just to make it a little bit more airtight. I mean, maybe not even airtight, just hold any ounce of water. And this was just everything from the narrative and story perspective. The technical perspective also had some problems. Like, I didn't like the cinematography here. The camera work in this movie just felt super basic. Like, the biggest, most prime example of this was during the metal concert that they all go to. Generally speaking, when you have a concert in your movie, this is your opportunity to add some real style to it. I mean, you have the lighting, you have a lot of people, you could do a lot of funky, crazy things in camera and in the editing, but this movie doesn't do anything. All it essentially had was a set of mids with our musicians playing on stage, headbanging and whatnot, and then you jump to mids, very similar framing of our audience where you have our main characters kind of jumping around moshing and then a few extras along the side, and it just doesn't do anything. It almost feels like they didn't have a full concert of people, of extras to work with while filming this scene. They kept things really tight versus having a nice vast wide of showing like a huge circle pit or something. It just felt like it was just very basic, like they just looked at it and just said, yeah, it's a concert, good enough. And it just felt like that mentality was used throughout the entire movie. It just didn't feel like they really orchestrated or put any care into the shots. They just kind of, actors, here, camera, here, shoot, got it. The visuals were just super uninspiring, and the audio was not much better. I felt like the sound design was poor. I felt like there were a lot of sequences where the music was way too low, but the sound effects and Foley and people's voices were too loud during like key action sequences, and it just never felt like it mixed and balanced correctly. Something that you feel like you should be able to overlook, but it just felt super distracting. All in all, this movie has a few redeeming qualities, and I appreciate what they were trying to do, but the execution just wasn't quite there. I'm going to give We Summon the Darkness a D+. I don't know, guess I'm not metal enough for this one. But that's just me. What do you guys think? Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe to this channel to stay up to date on new reviews coming real soon. Stay safe, and thanks for checking in.